Hey everybody, Larry Lawton here. I got a great video for you today. I'm going to be comparing jails and prison. When I get on the internet and I see stuff and I have to say something. Good, bad, or indifference. I love to see other things and other views. As a man who lived there and as a man who experienced all this stuff in the law, it's going to be a good video. Before I get started, please check us out on Patreon. Please check us out on YouTube member programs. Make sure you check out Gangster Redemption. Book is going crazy, as it should. It's just a wild ride. It's my life, and it's a wild ride. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna get to infographics. What they do, what's actually the difference of jails and prisons, what they said this video is. Let's check it out.
You did the crime, and now you're gonna do the time. You're shipping up to the big house, to the clink, to lockup city. But you could actually end up in two completely separate places, both with different sets of rules. Today we're asking jail versus prison. What's the difference? First, we'll start with jail, since if you were forced to choose, this is definitely the one you want to get sent to. Typically, this is what's known as the clink, with prison being known as the big house. Jails are normally much smaller facilities that hold a smaller number of inmates than prisons, which can have populations of several thousand.
Well, let me stop that right now. Technically, that's not true. Rikers Island's a jail. Right now, it's got 10,000 inmates, maybe. At one time, it had 30,000 inmates. You heard that correctly. Yes, typically, prisons hold more people, but there's county jails that hold 1,000 people, and, a lot of prisons don't do that. A lot of prisons hold, 1,000, 1,900, 18, give or take a lot. There are jails that hold a lot of people. LA County Jail, hello. So, that's kind of, it's just a misnomer. Yes, for the most part, but it's not true. Let's go on.
They're typically run by local governments, think city versus the state, and supervised by a county sheriff's department. Their population is mostly made up of people who have been recently arrested for minor offenses or a misdemeanor, and their sentences are far shorter than in prison, typically less than a year. Yet jails are themselves different from the temporary lockups, which are typically located inside police departments and hold individuals who can't post bail.
That's another one. A police station jail, I don't even know if they classify them. I don't even know if there's any rules to them, because they don't keep them there overnight even. They don't keep people there long times at all. Period. They also say, people are sentenced. They're usually not sentenced to county jails. We'll get into that in a minute.
Jails can also serve to hold prisoners awaiting trial or to hold a prisoner during a very long and extended trial. While they typically only hold individuals guilty of misdemeanors, if the sentences for several misdemeanors are not served concurrently, then an individual could be held for far longer than the typical period of less than a year. However, jails often offer work release programs, boot camps, educational programs, substance abuse support groups, and vocational training programs.
Bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on that. I don't know many county jails that are doing work release programs, boot camps. Yes, a boot camp. That's just another jail that they use. Educational programs or substance abuse support group. They have some of that. Vocational training, not really. You'll see more vocational training in a prison than you will in a jail. And as far as sentencing length, or most people in county jails are people who either couldn't afford their bail, so they had to wait and come in front of the judge, had no bail, or waiting a trial in that area. They want to fight their case, they don't have bail, they can fight their case, and it's right there in the jail. So I don't buy that. It's just, a place, typically, under a year. Yes, sentences are under a year. You can go to, and you will go to the county jail. If you have less than 365 days, actually 366, if you have 1 year or less, so 365 days, you will go to a county jail. A state jail won't take you. Now, some people will say, listen, I'd rather have over because you get more game time in the state prison system than you would in a county jail. So that is true. But I don't know how much you really want to go to a main state prison compared to a county jail. Let's continue.
Prisons, however, are a vastly different world than jails, and this is where the most hardened criminals are sent to. You'll find no misdemeanors here, and instead, prisons hold men who have been convicted of felonies. If you're wondering the difference between felonies and misdemeanors, misdemeanors include offenses such as petty theft, prostitution, simple assault, trespassing, vandalism, and reckless driving. Felonies, on the other hand, include crimes such as assault with a deadly weapon, grand theft, rape, and murder. If you had to pick which of the two populations to spend a year or more with, we're pretty sure you'd want to go with the misdemeanor crowd.
He is correct about that. You rather go to a county jail than you would a prison. Though they're going to get into the levels of prison, I'm going to talk about that as well. And yes, I, Larry Lawton, not proud to say this, have a lot of felonies. I had 6 felonies on my record. I'm not proud of that, of course, and I was a violent offender, technically, armed robberies. Even though I didn't have a gun, I had a BB gun, it's considered an armed robbery and a threat and all of that kind of stuff. So they ended up, taking me and put me in a federal maximum security prison. And we're going to get into this in a minute after he talks about this.
Prisons are run by the state or even the federal government, who has its own prison system apart from that of the state government-run prisons. The difference between the two types of prisons is pretty obvious. State prisons hold individuals who break state laws, and federal prisons hold individuals guilty of breaking federal laws. The difference between the two offenses can be a bit murky though, and federal prisoners can range from individuals who rob banks because banks are insured by the federal government to people accused of political crimes, and many white-collar criminals. For these reasons, state prisons are often much more dangerous than federal prisons, as they hold many more violent offenders.
That is not true. And let me explain why that's not true. The worst prison in the United States is a federal maximum security ADX Colorado. Before that, it was Marion. I was in Atlanta. At the time, when I was in Atlanta, it was the worst prison in the country, bar none. Yes, state prisons have violence like every other prison, but when you get to maximum security prisons, I often talk about this, that a lot of people don't get it. They say, oh, I'd rather be in the feds because they watch something like this. No, you wouldn't. You'd rather be in the state. And I'll tell you why. In the state, in a maximum security prison, the people who work in those places might have grew up with you, might have know somebody in the prison. There's more corruption. You can get away with more in the state prisons than you can the federal prisons. If you have money, you can do more. In the federal prison, they don't give a fuck who you are, what you know. And when he listed the crimes, he listed bank robberies. Yes, it's a federal offense. Yes, white-collar crimes and political crimes. And they go to a different prison. They go to a camp. It's a lot different than any other prisons. It's almost not a prison. It's a camp. It's non-violent under a certain... Well, in the feds, you can go to a camp if you have under 10 years, non-violent, first-time offender, can't have a gun, all these qualifications for it. Now, when you talk about maximum security prisons, they have drug lords, drug dealers, drug hitmen, mafia guys, mafia hitmen. You have violent guys who may be bombers, who bomb government buildings or bomb buildings. Yes, federal, but in maximum security prison, you're dealing with some big people who have a lot of power and are a violent group of people. You're talking about drug lords, and you're talking about people, the head of cartels, and you're talking about murderers and mafia, and you had many murders. When I was in Atlanta, we had 880 life sentence guys. Think of that. 880 life. Your life is over unless you get a pardon or somehow win an appeal or whatever you're going to do. So that's kind of a misnomer. A lot of people make that mistake too. Oh, I'd rather be in the feds, they're easy. Because they see a movie with the feds in the camps and a guy playing tennis or a guy on a golf course, and they're not playing golf. Don't let anybody bullshit you. That's not happening either. I took pictures. One of my videos early was actually Jessup, Georgia camp, and it looked pretty good. They could have walked right off the property. Literally walked off the property. Now when they get caught or something happens, if you're on the lam that long, and you get caught and everything happens, now you're going down to a higher security prison, probably a max. Now, what they don't mention is violence. Listen, state prisons have violence. Every prison has violence. I know about the violence that I witnessed and was involved in. Let me tell you something. You don't want to go to a maximum security federal prison. Not at all.
If you plan on breaking the law, then make sure it's a federal law and not a state law for a much safer prison experience. Both federal and state prisons range from minimum security to maximum security though, and the degree of the offense determines where you'll end up. Many white-collar crimes such as tax evasion can net you a stay in a federal minimum security prison.
That's called a camp. They called it a minimum security. It's a camp. In the federal system, they have minimum. Now in this video, we're going to see where they go.
Here, you'll enjoy many amenities, including team sports and a dining facility, with few guards and typically just a single fence. Minimum security prisons tend to resemble adult camps more than actual prisons, and some even have internet access for their prisoners. Visits with family are common, and violence is exceptionally rare. You'll also be able to enjoy a dorm instead of a cell, and overall, your stay will resemble something more like a college dorm than an actual prison. Offenders here typically have non-violent convictions and clean prior criminal records, though some can be prisoners who have been transferred from higher security prisons thanks to exemplary behavior.
Now, I'll go there. You know, what he said there about the camp prisons having less violence, absolutely. These guys are threatened at the camp. If they screw up, they're going up to a higher security prison. And obviously, they don't want that. But he also said, oh, you have dormitory style living. You know, dormitory style living is not that great. I wouldn't want it. I was never in a camp, and I never was in a low, and I could never get to those prisons. So I never was in a prison where they had dormitories. Every person who's ever been to a dormitory style living, even my brother who was in a low, dormitories are a big room with bunks all over. Remind me of the military, like when I was in the military in the Coast Guard boot camp. Dormitories are a group of people. There's massive bathrooms with, 10 toilets, 20 toilets and 20 showers and stuff. When you are in a medium or a high security prison, you get 2-man cells, usually. I remember when they tried to put 3 men in a cell and it didn't work. There were a lot of problems and they lost lawsuits and everything else, and they had to take them out of the prison cells. But anyway, they put 2-man cells. So at least you have some semblance of privacy. If you can get the cell you want and you can enjoy it, you become close, you have friends and everything else, that's a whole different thing. Now, you also have a bathroom in your cell, so you want to go to the bathroom in privacy. You close the cell door and you put we used to put a towel up over the glass window where they look in, and people would know if that's up, don't bother me, I'm on the shitter. So, that's some kind of privacy. You don't have that in a dormitory style living. I mean, a lot of things, cooking and everything else, like when I cook in a cell, I'm in my cell. Nobody's bothering us, the guards aren't bothering. You're in a dormitory, where you doing the cooking? I mean, near the washing machine, near the fucking phones, near the some desk that's out there, a laundry area. That's not the way to fucking do it. If you have a cell, it's a whole different animal. So it is better that way. So that's a little bit misnomer. I personally wouldn't want to go to those prisons anyway, the lows, because of the snitching and everything else. There's multiple rats and chomos, pedophiles, that kind of stuff are in lower security prisons. Sometimes they're in higher and medium, but once they get found out, they're usually what they call run up top. Which means they're either fucked up really bad or they're off the yard and they're not going to be there once they're found out. And those lows, they all don't give a shit. Forget camps. Camps are the bunch of tellers and a bunch of corporal, fucking punk ass people that don't give a shit, and they think they're bad. Those are the ones. I used to say I want to go to a low. I want to go to a camp. Just to go there and fucking rip somebody's head off back in the day. Now I won't want to do any of that.
Medium security prisons are what you probably think of when you think of prison, and though the inmates do enjoy some degree of independence, their movements are all very tightly controlled. You can forget things such as team sports or internet access.
Now, there is team sports in a medium, so that's not true. He is right on the controlled moves. That means you just can't get up and get out, walk out your door and go on the yard. Can't do that. You can't go to anywhere you want. You have to wait until the compound says 10-minute move, 10-minute move. Once they say 10-minute move, everybody leaves. Usually people are waiting at the door because they know it's coming, and everybody goes wherever they're going on the yard, and when you get there, they're going to announce, close the move, close the move. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, what happens if you're not there yet? They're going to let you get there. They're not, put you in a hole or anything like that. You can when they say 10-minute move, once they call the move, as long as you get out of your unit before they close the move, you can get to where you're going. But you can't start the move after that move is closed. So if you're in your unit and they say 10-minute move, 10-minute move, usually, you know it's coming. But let's say you're just in your cell talking with somebody, go 10-minute move, and you go, fuck, I gotta take a piss, I gotta do something or shit or whatever. You can literally go to your cell, take care of your stuff, see someone, drop something off, and get out of there before they say, the move's closed, close the move, move's closed. And then when they do that, the door's closed, everything's locked, but people can still get in. So let's continue.
Though some prisons may offer use of library computers as incentives to well-behaved individuals, medium security prisons also don't have cells, and instead have spanning dormitories that house dozens of inmates together.
See, that's not true. I've been in a few mediums, and every medium I know has, now maybe this, I'm talking to feds, let me go there. I don't know states. Federal system, all the mediums have cells, not dormitories. Now, a low security, if that's what they... See, I think they messed it up here a little bit. They went from a camp to a medium. It's really a camp to a low. They said a minimum. So if you call the minimum the camp is what they talked about, and the freedom with just a fence, not even anything, you can walk around in it, whatever it is, that's a camp. Minimum or camp. The next level up is low. Now, low has double wired fence with the concertina wire in between and all of that barbed wire on the tops of the fence, but they do have dormitory styles and lows. So I think they're a little bit confused.
Orange is the New Black is a good example of a medium security prison facility. Maximum security prison, or supermaxes.
Now, Orange is the New Black. That show confused me, and I'll tell you why. I watched the season, and I kind of got away with it once they had a murderer with a check writer. You don't see that. That's not happening.
Supermaxes is where the worst of the worst go. Yet this is where the least of all prisoners in the US serve their time. These places are inhabited by inmates with very violent offenses or those who have caused trouble in lower security prisons, earning them a trip to a much more restrictive life.
I went to a maximum security prison. I went to what's called a penitentiary. I guess they considered me a very violent offender. I never caused trouble because I was never in a lower. They immediately put me into a maximum security prison from when I was sentenced. I personally think they did that because I wouldn't tell. I wouldn't snitch. I don't believe in it, and I'll never believe in it. I understand it, but I'll never believe in it. It's just me. It's the way I am. And I think that's why they try to get me to talk, and I wouldn't. So they put me right to the worst of the worst.
Inmates who have tried to escape or successfully escaped and then been caught are also automatically sent to a maximum security prison.
I don't know if that's true. I will look that up. I remember I knew a guy who tried to escape a low, or did escape minimum, not a low. That's walking off the thing. And they put him in a medium. They didn't put him in a maximum security. They put him in a medium where they had double wired fences and their cells and accounts all day and all that kind of stuff. If he's a guy that's in a minimum security prison, which is a camp, and he walks off and goes, fucks his wife or some shit and he gets caught, they're not putting him in a maximum security prison. They're going to put him in Atlanta. I never saw it. They put him in a medium.
Unsurprisingly, an inmate's daily life is extremely restricted in a supermax, and head counts are common. Prisoners typically share a small cell with another prisoner and may get some freedom to move about the cells during the daytime, but must always be ready for head counts by lights out. Prisoners also enjoy cafeteria meals and time spent on recreation out in the yard, where they can do things like play basketball or lift weights.
All right, we'll stop that. In the federal system, there's no more weights. Zero. They're taken off every prison yard. So there's no weights in federal prisons. That's number one. When he talked about Supermax, they're locked down 23-1. Are they really locked? I mean, they don't give you the rec, and you're going to see that here.
While gang activity permeates the entire prison system and even jails, it's in maximum security prison where it's at its peak. And along with the restrictions imposed by the prison system, inmates live under a code of conduct further restricted by the gangs they join.
That is true. They have their own code of stuff, like if you don't get to breakfast, you don't do certain things, you don't act a certain way, you're going to get fucked up. Gangs are rough in prison. The reason they're different than in jails, they're everywhere. But they're more permanent in regular prisons, obviously max, because people are there longer. See, in a county jail, if you're only there a few months, there's such a big turnover, they don't get the foothold they do like they do in a regular prison, a state prison or a federal prison. Gangs are everywhere, and you know, it's tough for young people because that's what usually happens.
Inside a maximum security prison, you can also find solitary lockup, which is where the worst of the worst end up doing much of their time. Here, offenders who trespass while serving time in prison will get sent as a punishment. And though most stays last only a few weeks, they can end up serving as much as years in solitary.
Few weeks. I never spent less than 21 days in the hole. Never. For bullshit. I mean, for asking the warden, it was a funny story, but a bunch of guys when I got to the prison told me to go up to Willie Scott, which is a troubleshooting warden, Big Willie Scott, and said to tell him, hey, listen, you know, this is great, but the food needs to be fixed and all that. And I did that, and you know, I walked up there, and everybody's laughing. Not laughing yet. I mean, I don't know. I walk up, I'm new. He goes, Lieutenant, come here. Lieutenant comes there, he goes, lock him up. The fuck did I do? That's what you're supposed to be able to do. Go up to him and tell him stuff. Lock him up. 21 days. But they don't give you small time. In the feds, it's 30 days. It's like they love that number, 30 days. 60 days, no visits, no commissary, no phone program. So, and solitary, the way they treat you is just, it's the worst of the worst.
Offenses such as assaulting a guard will not only get you more prison time, but earn you several months or more in solitary.
Assaulting a prison guard will not only get you several months in the hole, and a transfer, and a level up check, a beating, I mean a real beating you will get. That's a fact.
Where you'll spend your entire day cramped up in a tiny cell with 1 hour of outside recreation a day. During that hour, you'll be allowed to sit in a small fenced-in outdoor area that's typically a few paces long by a few paces wide.
He's right there. You go out and get wrecked in we used to call it a dog cage. It was usually about 20 feet long, 10 feet wide, and that's your recreation. Nothing in it. Not a basketball hoop, not this, nothing. What do you pace? It's so degrading.
Though often you may not be allowed outside
This is true.
As short-staffed prisons simply can't spare the manpower to get you your hour of rec. Other times, guards may simply deny you your hour as a punishment measure. Between the two, you definitely want to serve your time in jail.
That is so true. Rec, you're supposed to you tell them in the morning you want rec. You know, they come by, do you want rec? They put something on your door. No manpower, it's raining out, safe and orderly running prison, whatever the fuck it is. I remember not getting rec for weeks. So they could tell you all they want, because the rules and the law say you're supposed to. Their policy says they're supposed to. The 8th Amendment of Cruel and Unusual Punishment says they should. I think that's classified as cruel and unusual punishment. And I think that the Supreme Court ruled on that. So they just don't give a shit.
Or at least in a minimum security prison where you'll enjoy many of the perks of what basically amounts to an adult camp. End up in a medium or maximum security prison though, and it's not only are you going to be there a long time, but your stay is going to be much more difficult and much more uncomfortable.
Now, obviously, yes, you want... Don't commit crime, guys. Let me just get that. I mean, I enjoyed doing this. I want to thank Infographics for doing these comic things, which I kind of like. Information is not right. It's just not right. When it's not right, I got to call it out. And in my view, now everybody can say whatever they want. I was in many prisons, and, some of this stuff is just off a little bit, but it's okay. He probably gets it from wherever, from the government that says all this shit and all that. Or I don't know, because the government wouldn't say we don't give them rec every time. So I give them a lot of credit, Infographics, thank you. And I want you guys to remember, don't go to prison, guys. I hope you enjoyed this understanding of prisons and jails, but don't go. Make good choices. Think before you act. The best way to prevent this is not going. I always say that. With that said, everybody, I want to thank you very much for watching. Please stay safe. Enjoy your time. Enjoy the new school year if you go to school or you're in there. And winter's coming around for everybody, obviously. It was a hot summer. Enjoy. Have a great day, everybody. Please stay safe. See you soon.